and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the Lagavulin 13-year-old Feis Ile 2021, Dustin.
Yep.
Or as we're releasing this video initially, this is the current Feis Ile bottling of Lagavulin. The 13-year comes in at 56.1% ABV. Dustin, a bit of a change from what we've seen out of Lagavulin in the last few years. They've gone 2019, 18 the previous years, with a 16 and 18 the years before. Went sort of young with this one. 13-year-old, which always begs the question why. Why go with a young whiskey when you've been doing ones closer to 20 years? Well, I don't know if they gave us an answer, but I do know this one was matured in traditional casks initially, and then had a finishing in port seasoned casks that were originally American oak.
Yep.
Heavily charred, as they say in the description. So port, usually something we like as far as an add-on on a whiskey, either a port cask or just the finishing in port. So we'll see what does this Lagavulin, which is at least age-wise very similar to the 12-year annual release.
Yeah,
so,
and I believe it started its life off through the exact same process that the 12-year goes through. So basically, this went 12 years, is my guess. I don't know if they disclosed, and then they put a year of port on it, thinking.
add a little something extra.
Yeah, maybe they had too much 12-year-old Lagavulin for once.
Seems like a poor plan for Feis Ile, I gotta say. Just to do you a younger whiskey like that.
Yeah.
And it's not like, some heavily shared or something, just...
First fill, balm of some sort, yeah.
But I will say port cask finishings and port cask whiskeys are very popular right now, so this doesn't come as a surprise they use this type of cask maturation. But enough about what they did do. Let's talk about the whiskey itself. Dustin, what are you picking up?
Getting like some soot, some charcoal. Definitely getting that traditional Lagavulin malt, but it's very much on the smokier side than most Lagavulins I get, Mike.
Yeah, there is. It's Lagavulin. I mean, that's pretty obvious. The port note to it seems faint. I can't tell if the smoke note is from the heavily charred barrel. It's maybe some of that barrel char, or if it's extra like smoke from the distillate itself.
It's not a traditional Lagavulin smoke.
Which would make me think the barrel.
Yeah, and I mean it is. It reminds me of like some of the 15-year-old bourbons that have been coming out, like say a Sam Houston 15. It's not like your Canadian Kentucky's, but some of these Barton distillate, where I do think they're starting to pick up a smoke note on that 15-year age statement.
Yeah, so port to me, there are varying degrees of success with port. Some are really good, some are very average. This is very much just a subtle nuance added to the whiskey. I don't think it's given it a whole lot, but it's more so that burnt charcoal character from the heavily charred cask, kind of doing a few different things with the sweetness.
Now, one thing I do pick up here, though, Mike, is as you kind of go back and forth with this one, I'll get it, I'll nose it, and I'll get a little bit too much ethanol. Then I'll nose it, and I'll get a little bit too much sort of youthful spirit. And then I'll nose it, and I'll just get straight sweetness and just beautiful. Okay, there's some port here now. It seems to kind of go back and forth. I'm not sure what's doing it. We've only had one glass of this beforehand.
Yeah, I'll say this. Port whiskeys do that to me anyway. Port whiskeys kind of, as you're enjoying them, range from a sickly too sweet smell to a very candied smell to me.
Yeah.
And they kind of go back and forth. I mean, sometimes it feels like, obviously it's two different notes that we're talking about, but it almost feels like you never pick both up at the same time.
Exactly. It's a
transition.
It's a bit of a chameleon. It just seems to kind of change, just kind of based on what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not getting like super impressive Lagavulin here. I guess this is my thought. And not that I thought any of the most recent releases, the 20, the 19, the 18-year-old, I haven't been blown away by any of them, so I wasn't expecting that. But, it's a solid smell, 88 smell. What are you picking up on the palate?
Yeah, I mean, this is, my first thought is I'm instantly going back to like that 2017 and 2018 Lagavulin 12s that, I know the 17 was loved by everybody. You and I actually were a little higher on the 18 than other people were. I do get a little more smoke and spice up front. I do get a bit of that port note coming in up front, and then I pick it up on the late finish. And I gotta say, it's nice. I mean, I'm still getting a beautiful finish. I also get this kind of traditional cask maturation that I get on a lot of these Lagavulins, where it's kind of somewhere between like a bread and a cracker, just kind of nice oak with the Lagavulin malt, a little nuttiness to it. Really solid expression of the 12 with a few things turned up. What do you think?
My initial thought was, on the palate, a lot of the same Lagavulin, texture, flavors. Reminds you of the 12-year on the palate. It really does. And the smoke level, again, it reminds me a lot of the 2018 Lagavulin 12. That's why when you mentioned that, as opposed to the 17, I was right there with you because that's a big portion of this experience. And then there's that cask. And it just comes off bitter. It's a little overly charred on the palate. And really, as soon as you swallow the mid palate and the finish, that's initially what you get, is that port cask band. And to me, that's really not the best use of a port cask I've ever experienced in my life. Let's just put it that way.
I don't know that it's a good port cask. I think for me, that's what I'm picking up instantly is like, I feel like you guys weren't that excited with this cask and you charred it for the hell of it.
Maybe it's the char on it. You know what I'm saying? So some ports have come off to me. Remember this remake, Fresh Port we did? I mean, so that was a very rich, I'm not saying it should be on the same level, but that was a very rich, very fruit-forward, sugary port.
Full maturation, I mean.
True, it only had a little bit of it, but this just feels overly heated up, burnt. I don't want to say burnt necessarily, but almost like charcoal or almost like caramel that was kind of like left over and it's kind of hitting the sides of like the warming bin or something like that. It just feels, again, like in the description, heavily charred.
Yeah, I'm usually not a fan of heavily charred, and I'm finding that I'm almost at this point finding it offensive with today's modern sherry casks. But on this one, I actually got to say, Mike, I like the char. I like that little bit of smoke it's adding. I like that effect. I like that up front. Now, I like bourbons more than you do, and I'm going back to some, what I don't consider great bourbons, but really good bourbons that I've really enjoyed in that $120 price point range, if you can find them for the right prices. This is bringing a lot of what I really like about those in, and then it's giving me peat, smoke, and that Lagavulin sweet maltiness, and then that nice nutty finish. I gotta say, for hearing 13 years old, knowing the reviews on this one have been really poor, this shocked me at how good it was.
I think it's not as. I had lower expectations before we popped this bottle. I agree. I think it is somewhat had the advantage of having a low expectation. It's like when you go see a movie, if everyone tells you it's great, you're never that impressed. But everyone says, hey, see this movie, it was okay. And you're like, oh, wow, it was really something.
I should put water.
It's something like that. But what I wanted to say, though, just to add on your point about the char, this comes off to me, the char level and like kind of the smoke note added to it, very similar to the Talisker 15 that was the special release a couple of years ago. So that...
Way less sweet, though.
No, I'm not saying it's the same. This is a different cask. What I'm saying is the char note, the heavy char note, it's similar in both of those whiskeys. I think the difference is the type of cask maturation. I just think the port cask in this didn't really handle a heavy char as well as whatever they used in that Talisker.
I'm not totally disagreeing with you. So, water?
Basically the same on this.
I'd get a little more sweetness now.
It made the port cask, the wine even more chalky.
I'm noticing the wine more, and I'm noticing the char a little less.
You are noticing the char slightly less with water, but...
the youth is starting to come out a bit more, though. You can definitely tell this isn't older.
Yes. Do you understand what I'm saying with the chalky port? Remember before I said Springbank Fresh Air was kind of like a fruit
It's juicy. Port? This is not juicy. Yeah, this is dried.
This is very dried initially, but when you put water in, it was almost like it's cracked and crumbled. If that makes any sense.
Kind of get you.
It comes off very artificial.
A little glue. Into Elmer's glue.
Yeah, I know when these originally came out, I found them some online retailers for around $350 plus shipping US, and I passed on them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I passed on them. And eventually I saw these on a couple secondary markets where people were willing to either take a loss or they had bought for a far better deal than what I've been able to see. And I picked them up shipped for, mid-twos, 240, 250, something like that. And I was willing to try it for that price, even though I'm a huge Lagavulin fan. But I got about what I expected.
Yeah, no water. I don't think it's improved this one. For me, it's actually made it taste more like what you were describing earlier, where that char and the port sweetness come together at the same time. For me, before I was getting char with Lagavulin malt, and then I was getting a little bit of port, and then I was getting the finish. Now they're coming together at the same time, and I gotta agree. I gotta say, I don't like the port and that charred note together. I liked that they were coming in for me in different spots in the whiskey before.
Yeah, they shouldn't step in the same area at the same time for sure.
Yeah, finish is still really nice.
Yeah, it's a weird cask finishing to me. You know what I mean? Almost if they just said, hey, here's a 13-year-old that we just had in traditional cask, but we thought you did a really good job or whatever, and say it was similar in texture, say to the 2017 Lagavulin 12. I mean, I would have bought that more readily than here's a trendy but superficial finishing.
Yeah.
And, it's going to change it enough to where I think some people will say, oh, well, you know, maybe this is nuanced, but I'm not one of those people. I just think it's a rushed, hurried, poorly seasoned or aged cask to begin with. As far as the finish, you know what I'm saying? It reminds me of Talisker 8, the second one, the 2019. They had the rum finish. It was like, there's some of it, but there isn't a lot. You pump this up because of this cask finishing, and whatever it added was insubstantial, and that bit that was insubstantial really didn't benefit it at all.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Am I being too harsh?
I kind of think you are.
Okay.
I really do.
All right.
I think this is a better whiskey than you're describing. I think this is, for somebody who loves the Lagavulin 12, I think this is better than most Lagavulin 12s I've had.
Okay.
I think there's some notes that you're not going to like if you aren't a fan of some of the charred port, for sure.
And it's super fortified wines.
And I don't think they've not enhanced the Lagavulin 12 in any substantial way. They've added a couple things I like, a couple things I don't. All in all, I think this is a really good example of a Lagavulin 12, and certainly better than that 19 we had.
All right, so we're at as far as the whiskey score on this one.
I'm a solid 87 here, Mike.
86. And I was even thinking 85. I mean, I don't know.
I was thinking 88, and the only thing that's stopping me is the fact that water kind of is throwing this one off.
I mean,
that's what's really taking it down for me.
Yeah, water lessened it to some degree, but you know, we spent some time with this before this review. I mean, letting this thing air out for a long time. Again, just to try to get our final taste.
Yeah, we had this open for a solid hour before we even got into it.
Just trying to get into it, and I mean, it was pretty consistent with its profile. I mean, I let Lagavulin initially.
Yeah, but again, I think, you know, if a whiskey can't hold water, that's going to hurt it for me. So anywhere close to one score or another, I'm going lower. And that's because this one was almost an 88 for me, which would put it comparable to the 18 and the 17 Lagavulin 12.
Yes.
And I took it down just because of the way those hold water. This one doesn't. But neat. I like this one every bit as much as those two, just in different ways. There are different times I'd pour this one on a cool fall day. Maybe I'm outside. This would be the one I'd want. Those other ones, I actually could drink some of those other Lagavulins on a summer day. Whereas generally, you know, peat's not your summer whiskey, but like that 17, that's a summer peat.
No, if we're drinking with random people over here and I pull out a Lagavulin and it's this, it's not because I wanted it. That's what I think of their palate. Just so you know. that would be our thing. Our thing. Yeah, so I'm an 86. I'm definitely not as impressed with this. You know, it's me. I love Lagavulin. When they're hits, they're hits. When they're misses, they're misses. They're hard. But, you know, it's about what I thought it was going to be. Let me ask you this. If I could get another deal on this bottle at $250 delivered, you taking one?
No, I give it an 87. I mean, this is
Nope.
150.
Yeah.
That's what this should be. 150, that's the value of this bottle. And even that feels high, but current prices we're seeing today, 150 is a very fair price, but that's really about what I'd want to pay.
All right, so I'm going to cap this, maybe gas it, put some film around it, come back to it in a year. There's no other reason I'd be drinking this.
Just let it open up for a year, see if it changes.
Yep, there we are. All right, so those are our thoughts on the whiskey. Let us know if you guys had a chance to try this new Lagavulin 13, the most recent release of Feis Ile, the 21 version. At least when this video posted will be. Dustin, until next time, what do we wish folks?
Happy drinking.
We'll see you then.